Okay, so the first step of this painting is going to be painting the background, but I wanted to show you a little bit of my process. In the earlier paintings, I didn't always, in the earlier paintings in this course, I wasn't practicing and I was getting a little frustrated, so I decided to do a couple practice paintings. And that's something I do when I'm doing my own paintings. So this was the first one and I was getting frustrated. And then I started another one on this side. I had them all taped out and, I had my composition on my sketch to the proportion of the size of these rectangles, 8 by 6. And then I didn't like the way this one turned out, so I painted over it, which I'm gonna show you how to do. And then I think this was my third or fourth version that was looking okay to me, better. But I still see some stuff that I can be critical of, which namely the laptop looks like it's floating. It doesn't look grounded on the desk. And I think just my cast shadow needs some work if I was going to finish this. And so this is how you can be your own critic. But you don't want to get too harsh on yourself because this is plenty good enough for me where I'm at and for practicing and what I want to show you. I actually probably spent too much time doing these practice paintings. This wasn't what I wanted to show you, but it could have been enough just to get you started. And so I just mostly want to tell you that even myself with 25 plus years experience of being an art student and then teaching art and making art, I still get frustrated. I still have to do things over and over again. And then at a certain point, I have to say, it's good enough. Perfection is not going to happen. Perfection doesn't exist. This is good enough to show my students what I want to show them. And I see all the faults and I can move on and learn from this and apply it to my next painting. I don't need to keep going and spending so much time. I don't have the time to spend hours and hours on this, and I'm sure you don't either, right? So I do think starting over can be really helpful. This was just annoying me. So I just moved to another part of the canvas, and then I'm gonna show you to just paint over this. You can just acrylic is awesome because you just paint over it and start again. And I think there is a lot to be said for starting again. Another little tip I wanted to show you is my tape got all covered up with paint. So I removed the tape off this one so you could see the edge. And if you're having a lot of bleeding on the edge, just use the back of your nail, or you can use the side of the brush to really get it down, because if you're using a canvas board, it has a lot of texture on it. Okay, so being self-critical is good, but don't be overly critical. And just remember that everyone is where they're at. I want you to be where you're at in your painting experience, and anything you see on social media, galleries, museums, those people have 20 years of really bad artwork that they have not shown on social media. So it didn't just happen overnight. If you're seeing impressive paintings online or go to a museum, that's a lot of decades usually of hard work, and you're only seeing the culmination of all of that. You're only seeing the best of their paintings. You're not seeing all the stuff that they painted over, threw in the trash, burned out of frustration. So I just want to make it really clear that I get frustrated too. All artists do. Art is not easy, or else everyone would be an artist, right? I think you're starting to see, hopefully, that art is a lot more difficult than it looks, and it takes a lot of skill and practice, just like anything else, like sports, athletics, music, anything like that. It takes practice, and we're never looking for perfection. We're looking for just improvement over time. So, I know you don't have a lot of time. I don't have a ton of time. You can let stuff just be as it is, learn from it, and move on to the next thing. I could probably keep on working on this for hours and hours, but it was time to just let it go because I had allotted a certain amount of time to get this done. I went over that time and I had to just be done. Okay, so I'm gonna paint over this one, and this is gonna be my demonstration that I do for you. And you can make your background any color for this project. You just can't have it the white of the canvas. I want it to be some kind of solid color that you paint on the background. Mid-tone is a good choice, like some kind of neutral gray or brown. What's great about doing a mid-tone background is that then you just paint the highlights and the shadows, and your mid-tone is already there. So it saves you some time getting down the basics of the painting, you know, the outlines of the painting and blocking in. You can also do a really fun color. A lot of artists do really bright colors in the background. You could, if you're getting more into color theory and you want to experiment, you can try like the opposite of the colors that are in your painting. So this painting has a lot of warm tones with the wood and the books. So the first thing I did, the first underpainting I did, the background was this like bright aqua with phthalo green. I didn't love the way that looked, and you can have some of the background showing through like I do here, or you might cover the whole thing up. So it's really up to you, the color background that you do. If you're not sure, I would say just go for like a neutral mid-tone. I encourage you to experiment and have fun. You can do hot pink, hot green, and of course you can mix the colors on a palette. This is a glass palette that I'll be using, but you can also just mix it right on the canvas, which I think sometimes is fun. And if you're like annoyed at a previous painting, it's kind of fun to just like squirt paint on top. So I'm gonna do like a gray bluish color, which is gonna serve as a sort of a mid-tone, but also a lot of the background of this wall is this gray blue color. So already having that tone down is gonna help me a lot. So I'm just doing titanium white, a little bit of ultramarine blue, and some black, a little bit of black, kind of the same amount of black and blue to make like a cool gray. And then I'm just mixing it all up on the canvas, and you can always add more paint if you didn't add enough more paint. I did this several times, so I kind of am used to the amount of paint, but you can always add more paint. And to cover up, if you're covering something up, you want a thick layer. And even if you're not covering something up, you want to cover up all the white of the canvas. You want to start with a solid tone down and no white showing. So what this does, you know, painting a background on your painting helps with that blank canvas syndrome that, you know, you have when you're just staring at a blank canvas. Now you have a color, a solid color already down there. And like I said, if it's a mid-tone color, then you can easily paint highlights. So you can paint really light tones on this and they'll show up better than they would on the white canvas. And then you can paint really dark tones on it and they'll show up as well. And then you kind of already have these middle values in here if it's a mid-tone. If it's a bright color, you can use it as a contrast to whatever's in your painting. We're going to be talking about warm and cool tones a lot with this painting, the temperature of the colors. So this is a cool gray that I'm choosing with some blue in it to make it cool. And that I'm choosing this because there is a lot of warm tones in my still life. So I'm choosing an opposing sort of neutral color to what's in my still life. All right, so get this smooth. I have a little like chunky areas, you could always take sandpaper to the acrylic. Please do that outside. And I recommend using a mask. If you don't mind the chunky things, you can leave them, but you can definitely just use regular like sandpaper from the hardware store to smooth out the canvas and get some of the bumps of acrylic off if you don't like that. And then we're gonna let this dry, and then we're gonna come back and block in the shapes.